South Africa's case against Israel at the ICJ is falling apart, and this report shows it. So a new report has been released detailing the deaths in Gaza since the start of the war on October the 7th. But before we get into it, could I please remind everyone to subscribe to the channel? It's completely free, and all you've got to do is click that subscribe button in the bottom left corner of this video. Now let's proceed. So before we jump into the reports, it's very important that we understand where the ICJ case is at present. So unfortunately, South African media has been peddling a false narrative because they explained that the ICJ found that there is plausibility for genocide going on in Gaza. This, however, has been debunked. So the former ICJ president, Joanne Donoghue, stated on BBC's Hard Talk what the problem is with this narrative. She explained, the court decided that the Palestinians have a plausible right to be protected from genocide, and that South Africa had a right to present that in the court. It did not decide, and this is something where I'm correcting something that's often said in the media, it did not decide that the claim of genocide was plausible. So the only decision that the ICJ really made in its ruling is that the Palestinians have a right to be protected from genocide, and not that Israel is plausibly committing genocide. There's a very big difference here. Before we get into the report, it's very important that we understand what the definition of genocide is. So the ICJ is a UN court. So let's take a look at the United Nations definition of genocide. So, according to the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, Article 2, in the present convention, genocide means any of the following acts committed with the intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group. As such, killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. So looking at the definition of genocide, I think it's very important for us to highlight intent to destroy. Those are the key words here. Because of course there are war situations in which massive casualties are amassed, but that doesn't necessarily link to an intent to destroy a certain community. That being said, let's get into this crucial report. The report I'm talking about has been published by Salo Eisenberg, who is a member of the board of the Honest Reporting Media Group. So in his report, Eisenberg explains that he collected data from all formal investigations into the casualties during this war. It includes Hamas figures, as well as IDF figures, and others. But in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through the entire report. I'm just going to give the conclusion. If you would like to check out the whole report, however, the link to it is in the description box below. So taking a look at this table over here, we see that in September 25, the total fatalities per Hamas are 65,400 people. According to the report, however, around 10,000 deaths were caused due to natural causes and infant mortality, and so that is not war-related. We then have to minus another 1,000 deaths due to errors and other data anomalies. Remember, what Eisenberg is doing is he's measuring reports from different sources, and so this is probably where these anomalies derive from. Okay, so now we have total war-related deaths since October the 7th, 2023. Those stand at 54,400. Now, there's a very important figure here, which is the 4,000 deaths in which people were either killed by Hamas or internal issues, such as rockets which were launched by Hamas yet fell within the boundaries of Gaza, gang fighting. We have noticed that since the ceasefire, there has been a lot of clashes between different rival clans and factions within Gaza. So this is important to note. And these sorts of casualties number at about 4,000. So now we have adjusted war-related deaths of 50,400. There's then fatalities not on any list, mainly combatants, and that actually adds to the total of 57,400. Finally, there's the division between combatants who are killed by the IDF, so by Israel, and civilian fatalities. We see that the combatants amount to 24,000 according to the study, whereas civilian fatalities amount to 33,400. And this amounts to a civilian combatant ratio of 1.39. So for every combatant who was a casualty, there was 1.39 civilian casualties. Now you may be thinking, well, there are still more civilians who are casualties as opposed to combatants, right? But here is where it's very important for us to understand how this ratio works when compared to other wars. So John Spencer, who is a US national security expert and the chief of war studies at the Madison Policy Forum, put a pretty interesting post up on X. He explained that in the 2016-2017 Battle of Mosul, the biggest urban battles since World War II, the US-led Iraqi security force killed 10,000 civilians to destroy 4,000 ISIS in the city. That is a 1 to 2.5 combatants to civilian death ratio. So for those who might not remember, the Battle of Mosul was really one of the final battles in the war against ISIS in the Middle East. So in the 1945 Battle of Manila, which did have some variables similar to Gaza, like high number of defenders, tunnels, and hostages, the American military killed 100,000 civilians to destroy 17,000 Japanese defenders. That is a 1 to 6 combatants to civilian ratio. The 1950 Second Battle of Seoul, another battle with similar variables to the battles of Gaza, American forces likely killed tens of thousands to kill 7,000 North American enemy. And so what this shows us is that the civilian to combatant ratio in Gaza is much lower than other modern wars. So with the ceasefire in place and the hostages returned to Israel, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa still doesn't feel that he wants to back down from the ICJ case. So we can see by this EWN article that he explained that while South Africa applauds a peace deal brokered in the Middle East, it won't change South Africa's case in the International Court of Justice. However, this recent report and others like it could severely hinder its chances at success. Thanks very much for tuning into the video. If you enjoyed it, please remember to subscribe to the channel. Until next time, I'm Matthew Cohen, and this is the Power Pod.